welcome back to the Feed to Succeed podcast. I'm Betsy Hjelmgren, registered dietitian and pediatric nutrition expert, and I'm here today with my co-host.
Hi everyone, I'm back. It's Jen Karakosta, family and consumer sciences teacher and culinary coach.
Hi Jen.
Hi.
So I'm really excited. I'm so excited. I'm almost giddy.
I know, me too. I'm excited.
I might be a little silly, but you have been on a sabbatical.
Yeah, hiatus.
And in the interim, in the past year, we did do one podcast season without you.
Yeah, I was sad. I missed it.
And I was also sad, and I was hoping that eventually you'd make your way back, and you did.
Here I am.
So we're very excited to have you back. What can you do in terms of catching us up on life? Tell us stuff.
Well, this year's been crazy.
Okay.
And I had to take something off my plate to get some life things in order, and I always hoped that I'd be able to find time again, and I did, and here I am. So I don't remember when it was, but I said I'd like to record again.
You did.
And you said when?
Yes. So I think you may have dropped a hint about it in like the late winter.
Okay.
And then things kind of hit the fan in March.
Yeah. I keep calling it the apocalypse, and I probably shouldn't, but I don't know. Lots going on in our world right now, yeah, I think I did. Maybe January, February. I said I think I could start recording again at some point, and you said when, and I said, well, let's start getting some dates on the calendar, and then we all sheltered in place.
We did,
and that wasn't gonna happen. And I think at first we thought maybe we could.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, at first I remember, I mean, it was like, I know it was the week of March 16th because that week was my birthday.
Right.
And we had that conversation like, well, I think we can start thinking about recording another podcast series. And we were like, well, maybe we can do it from home. We can use the little portable mics and record like, together.
Episodes here and there. Yeah, we can record together.
We'll shelter in place, but just be like seeing each other, and really that would be okay, is what we originally thought.
That came to a screeching halt.
It came to a screeching halt when that same week my own family was pretty sick.
Yep.
And we were not sick enough to get any testing done to find out if we had COVID.
Right.
So we were advised to just completely isolate ourselves and wait it out.
Yeah.
So you had invited us to dinner the 17th, St. Patrick's Day.
Right. I made a St. Patrick's Day dinner, a traditional boiled corned beef dinner, and I think that week before we had planned it, and you were all going to come over, and then you said, David's really not feeling good. I don't know how you feel about this. And I could tell each of us were kind of deciding, like, who's going to say it first?
Who's going to say this?
Nobody wants to hurt each other's feelings and what have you. And I said, you know what? Probably been a good idea for all of us to sit down at the table together. So how about I pack up dinner and bring it over? And so I did, and put it on your front porch. And probably a good idea that we did that I did that.
And which was actually very gracious of you, because you had invited us to dinner and you were going to host us, and then you ended up not only hosting us but still feeding us, which was very, very kind.
Hey, I have a hard time, like, I can cook for one, or I cook for like 20.
Yeah.
So I always have a ton, and I was happy to do it. And that is an Irish dinner St. Patrick's Day dinner is probably one of my most favorite dinners to eat. I don't make very often, obviously.
Yeah.
So I was happy to share it. But even like going back a little further than that, in school, obviously in January, we were hearing about COVID-19 in China, and then it was starting to spike quite a bit, and our students were like, are we going home? Are we going to go, are we going to do school from home? And you know, you're like, I don't know. And then there were conversations at school about we probably need to start making some remote learning plans. And I'll never forget March 9th, because it's my daughter's birthday. We had a late start that day, and we were asked to make 2 weeks worth of remote lesson plans. And there were 18 cases, confirmed cases of COVID in Illinois. I don't know why that number sticks with me, but there were 18 confirmed cases, March 9th.
Yeah.
Thursday, March 12th, in the morning, it went from, we probably will not make it to spring break and we'll be going home, to at 3 o'clock, we're shutting the school down right now. And it was very eerie, because the students, I think, got a text before the teachers, so they were like, see ya! Like, what is going on here? And there was just a lot of unknowns, and so that Friday was just kind of a day off to figure it out. And then the next week we did a week of remote learning that we had planned for, and I in my head thought, maybe we'll be out for a couple weeks. We'll be out for 2 weeks, we'll come back after spring break. And I remember a student saying, you know, do you really think we're gonna do this? And I said, you know, I've been teaching for a long time and I've never had to make plans like this, so something's telling me we're going home. And then the weeks passed on. And I believe April 17th, something like that, was when the state said that we're closed for the rest of the year. I cried.
It was a lot of like shock and grief and not knowing.
Right.
And
then you were seeing just spikes all over the place, and it's all on the news, and that brings anxiety around. But, you know, all of a sudden you went from life going on as normal to everyone's at home.
Right.
But you really shouldn't be going anywhere. So I think we have a lot to talk about in terms of food and
we do
life. But
absolutely,
you know, that was kind of the timeline, I guess. You know, so.
I remember March 9th as well, because that was the week before we were sick, but I had a headache that day, and I know that because the second Monday of every month we have a staff meeting here at the office, and I thought, oh, I have a headache. It's just a headache, I'm okay.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure it wasn't. And
then Wednesday, I was teaching at that point, because Wednesdays in the spring semester I teach at Rush University, and I went down there and they said, oh, this is the last time you're going to meet in person. The rest of the semester is going to go online. And that was the day that I was like, oh, this is serious.
Yeah, this is real serious. Yeah, I mean, we've you know, this pandemic has certainly uncovered inequities in education, inequities in food sourcing. And
socioeconomic.
I mean, this is there's so many layers to this, but you know, the unemployment rate's at an all-time high, and people being able to file for those benefits, and where are they going to get meals from, and students that rely on breakfast and lunch at school. How is that going to happen? And you know, I have to say, school districts turned on a dime really to make this work, and it wasn't perfect, believe me. There was a lot of stress. But I really applaud what the school districts did to try to help families out as much as they possibly could, especially when it came to food. And I know many school districts over the summer will be doing the same thing.
So let's talk about New Trier, because that's where you are. Do you have knowledge about what they have been doing during all this time off?
So the food service company, they were doing meal pickup for families that needed it through our catering, Quest. And from what I understand, they'll still be doing that throughout the summer. And I believe Quest also is our children's school district food service. Food service, and they were doing the same thing, doing meal pickup. And I think it was something like every other day you were able to pick up for 2 days at a time. I have a friend that is out in the western suburbs, and they were all taking turns rotating going in to do families that were coming in, they were doing a food pickup. And you know, I also know so many of our food banks have not seen enough. I mean, they saw such a spike in need, so you know, there were a lot of different people that were going on social media to say I can help, or I have groceries to donate, or something like that. So From what I understand, at least I've seen on the news in the Chicago Public Schools, they're gonna be doing that throughout
Okay.
the summer, so, yeah.
It's been interesting. So my business initially, that first week that Illinois shut down was the week of March 16th.
Right.
And we've had a lot of changes happen in a short amount of time, because prior to this we were required to physically see a patient in order to bill insurance. And when that happened, I was like, oh shoot.
Right, what
Am
am
I
I
out of
gonna do with my
business?
Yeah, right, am I out of business? What am I gonna do with my patient load, or these patients that need my services?
Right.
100%,
Yeah. So what I decided, and I put it to my team, and we decided, at the risk of our own well-being, that we were going to keep seeing our patients on Zoom and do telehealth and cross our fingers and hope that insurance was going to come around and start covering this service.
Sure.
And we decided that in the meantime, we were going to see these patients anyway, and we may or may not get paid, because some of them really need services to continue. They can't have a gap in services for their child. Children who rely on feeding tubes have to be monitored to make sure they're being fed enough, to make sure they're growing.
Right.
We didn't do that for everybody, like not the critically ones, but the critical ones we decided we were just going to keep going. Well, that was last 2 weeks of March when we were first sheltering in place. The first insurance company that did come around and say, okay, we will cover this, was Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yeah, I saw that in the news.
Yes, which was really great. And I really, as much as we complain about health insurance and as many frustrations that I could share about other situations, they do a good job for the most part.
Okay.
And I was really pleased. They usually take the lead in these things. So they did come around and start paying. And then it became early intervention, which is a state-run thing. What are they going to do? So at first we had to only provide services by telephone.
Telephone. Okay.
And our pay was cut because telephone services are not covered at the same rate as regular services.
Sure.
So that was
person.
scary.
Absolutely.
But we went on a leap of faith and we said, we're going to keep going. Some of our early intervention families have insurance. We're going to offer them to do the telehealth if they have insurance and just bill their insurance instead of the state. And lo and behold, as time's gone on, there's been this massive shift. So this past week I saw 24 patients, which is my typical patient load. 100% of them by telehealth on Zoom, and I believe that all those visits will be covered. So there's been this huge shift in the way we deliver healthcare to people in a very short period of time, and it's been very interesting.
Absolutely. I also think that this rapid tide shift might be some changes that we will see permanently at this point. Do you think so?
I am hoping that.
Okay.
What I'm finding with the telehealth is it's so much easier to do follow-up visits when you have a family who maybe needs some weekly check-ins and some weekly accountability, but they don't want to drive from Arlington Heights to Glenview once a week in the middle of a busy school day. So I actually feel like it's improving the quality of care.
Okay.
There's some downsides when you can't weigh and measure the kids yourself. You're going on a home bathroom scale and
right,
making some estimates.
right.
But for many of these kids, it's improving the quality of the care we can provide, which is great. So yes, I'm hoping that it continues.
Okay. And I know you've talked about you have children where you have a language barrier at home, you have an interpreter then helping with families. So there's a lot of layers to it
There are.
that I think people don't necessarily think about, but it also is a level of comfort. I think that families are probably appreciative that they are not having to make this choice first for their child that really needs some care and some follow-up, but they're not now putting themselves or their child, who probably is already compromised
medically, yeah.
right, now in an even harder position.
Yes, and I'm worried about that because I families are already starting to ask, and so are other therapy providers, when is the state going to make us go back into these families' homes?
Absolutely, yeah.
When are they going to pull the plug on telehealth? We don't know. They haven't announced it yet.
Right. But hopefully they won't. I mean, maybe they see a huge benefit to this, and hopefully if they're hearing from healthcare providers that are showing some real positive signs and that kids are being treated effectively at home.
It would be amazing.
Even a hybrid of both at some point,
Yeah.
when there's a little bit more safety to reopen. There's just so many unknowns.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not a medical professional. I like to read a lot about it, but give my opinion.
Yeah, but we've all been affected by this in different ways.
Absolutely. Even, you know, I've stated, I'm confident that all the flu that went around in February was probably COVID.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have no proof of that, but we had a huge number of students that were sick with headaches and fevers and, you know, not necessarily the stomach flu, and, you know, that I think that'll be a really interesting piece to research and such. And, you know, now we're going into the summer and e-learning is done. I've called my home the COVID-19 bed and breakfast.
Yeah, you have.
And I'm running a one-room schoolhouse, and I'm done. I'm over it.
Yeah.
I'd like to shut that down for
I know
about
you
10 weeks at this point. But let's talk a little bit about food in sheltering in place and,
Yeah.
and how that's all,
Let's
all
do
gone.
that. So from my point of view, especially now that I'm able to connect with some of our patient families, it seems like some families are really having a hard time. It's split. Some families are, oh, we finally can eat family meals together. We're cooking at home, and other families are like, oh my gosh, we have no schedule. Everything's chaotic. I'm not sure when my kid ate last.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How has it been at your house?
I think a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly, the girls and I are having family meals every night. There's been many times I've threatened to get up from the table when bad behavior is taking over. I'm like, I don't need to sit and listen to this. I'd like to go watch Access Hollywood by myself in my room and eat dinner if you guys are going to behave like this.
Right.
But no, we've sat down and eaten most nights, and I'm cooking obviously at home. I've done takeout maybe once a week to try to support a local business. But the schedule, I think because I'm so schedule oriented, usually we stick to it, but I'm noticing that they just want something all the time.
Sure.
So at night, I'm putting them to bed, and my 5-year-old's like, did you want me to give you my order for breakfast now? I'm like, what am I rubbing here? You know, it's just like, I want cereal in a bowl with milk, and I want apple slices with peanut butter, and I want milk in a cup, and I'm like, let's slow down. That sounds like enough to start, and then we'll go from there. But then 20 minutes later, they're like, well, that was like our first breakfast. What time is second breakfast?
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I gotta work.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's another completely different issue.
yeah.
And that's part of the problem with some of the families I've been working with. Yeah. So
Tell me about your house, because your kids are older, so a little
So-
bit more, you know, they're a little more self-sufficient.
right, and when this all first began, we didn't know how long it was going to go on. So
Right.
for the first week or two, it was kind of free, and then when we realized this could be a while, we sat down and made a schedule, a day for the day. Like, you need to get up and be in the kitchen by 8:30 and eat something.
Yeah.
And at 12:30, we're all going to stop and grab some lunch. And we're going to have dinner every night at 7. And that was really great, especially in those days of really quarantine and not knowing what was coming next, to have that routine.
Yeah.
But it did work. It worked really well for a while. But as time went on and things started loosening up and we started just feeling the fatigue of being home all the time, I didn't want to get up and make sure my kids were eating breakfast at 8:30 and make sure that they were having fruit and protein, and I didn't want at lunch to get the whole refrigerator out so everybody could make a sandwich. And I started feeling like, well, I'm working too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why am I doing
Why am
all
I
of
doing
this?
that? Right.
And then I have to cook every stinking day. For a long time, there weren't a lot of restaurant options.
Right.
And as mom, I felt some resentment.
Yep.
And some fatigue.
Yep.
And I'll just be honest, it kind of fell apart.
And that's okay.
I did great for a while.
Yeah. You know what, I think there are probably plenty of families that are saying the same thing. Like, we started off with a bang and we had a schedule. I mean, even those first weeks, like, every social media post was like these beautifully color-coded schedules. Like,
Right.
Get up, iPad time, e-learning. And like a week later, I'm like, just please do something,
Right.
A lot of tears, a lot of yelling. But with the food, you're like, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to have family meals and this is going to give me an opportunity to try new things. And then you realize, I have to do all this on top of the work I've done in my house anyways, plus my job.
My job, right.
Yeah, absolutely. That was tough. Or at noon when I know I'm getting on a meeting on Zoom and my kids are like, we're starving. I'm like, when you starve, you just ate. And then my 7-year-old's like, I'll make lunch. I'm like, fine. I just resort fine.
Okay, so.
Which is terrifying, but.
Just for a little bit of perspective here. So Nate, he'll be 12 in a couple weeks. This week. Here's an example of what this week is looking like now. One morning, he's supposed to, school ended Thursday.
Yeah.
But until that happened, he was supposed to be on a school Google Meet by 9. So the instruction was be downstairs by 8:30. Feed the dog, get yourself some breakfast, get yourself organized for your school day. And so what was happening by this week, the last week of school, so he was screeching into the kitchen at 8:57, plopping down in front of his computer, starting on these Google Meets, and around 10 or 10:30, I would be on a break from my Zooms, and I would say, did you eat breakfast yet? And he would say inevitably no, and then the fight of, well, you have to eat something would ensue.
Right.
But I'm not hungry. Well, I have to get back to work, you need to get yourself something. But I'm not hungry, I don't want to. So the week started looking like by 10:30 or 11, he would grab maybe a granola bar.
Okay. Not enough.
Not only that, but we have like healthy food options. We have fresh fruits and cereal and toast. He's got to grab these packaged granola bars. And then so it's 10:30, and so then at 12, I'm getting some lunch on my lunch break, and I'd be like, Nate, let's have some lunch. I'm not hungry. So, then, the same thing would happen. You have to eat some lunch. Well, but I'm not hungry. I just had a granola bar. So, this past week, every day at like 2:30, you still need to eat something. And by then, I'm back at work.
Right.
So, one day lunch this week was, no, more than one day, I'm totally lying. A gigantic bowl of trail mix, because he loves this Costco trail mix, the one with the M&Ms.
Really good. I get it.
And so that is like 500 calories, that bowl of that he's eating. So he's stuffed from that. So a lot of times that was his entire lunch. Or another day when I was supervising and I said, that is not a meal.
Right.
You need to have a meal. So then he made a quesadilla with 2 tortillas and cheese melted in the microwave. And then he had some more plain tortillas. And he's like, I'm full. And I said, you didn't have any fruit. You didn't have any vegetables. You didn't have a glass of milk. Because he knows. We talk about this stuff. I'm a dietitian. We talk about this all the time.
Right.
But I'm full now, Mom.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's happened, dinner has been fairly consistent, but the other thing that's happened at my house is like, we're staying up late.
Yes.
11 o'clock every night. And even moving dinner back to 7, at 9 or 10, everybody's hungry again. And so the kids are eating sweet and junk and dessert every single night.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think breakfast is, can we have dessert tonight? I'm like, could we get through the day?
Right.
I mean, I'm with you. The bedtimes have gotten later, and part of it's typically I can get my kids to bed at 7:45, 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
1, on school nights when we were in school.
Mm-hmm.
2, when it doesn't get dark until 8:45 at night.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard at 7:45 to be like bedtime, and they're like, it's daylight,
Yeah.
I get it. They want to be outside and running around and playing, and those are all great things, but then dinner's cleaned up and put away, and they're like, we're just a little hungry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, well, here's carrot sticks. They said, well, I don't want that. I said, well, that's
Right.
what's being offered.
Right. And then you're not that hungry.
And they're not that hungry.
Right.
No, exactly. And breakfast, can I have eggs? Great. Would you like fruit? Maybe. I'm
Right.
trying to do lunch semi-balanced, but I also like, you know, you and I talk, I mean, we don't keep a ton of processed foods in the house,
Mm-mm.
so there's not those options, you know.
And that's complicating because in order for my kids to then have a balanced lunch takes a little prep. Not a huge amount, but a little bit.
No, but you're taking a lot of stuff out.
It's more prep than they're willing to do if
Yes.
I'm not there pushing it.
Right.
And so if I am not there, because I'm on a Zoom meeting or whatever, it's not happening.
No, absolutely. And I try to time it. I'm like, okay, listen, mommy's got a class at this time and mommy's got a class at this time. And my classes on Zoom were interesting. Nonetheless, but I said, you know, this is when we've got to eat. And, you know, let's get back to work. And it's so funny because I also, my first grader really fought me on e-learning, and the amount of time we spent arguing about it, she could have been done in 90 minutes. It was like, this is taking 6 hours. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose my mind. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, we're done with school, we got everything done. Oh, it's dinner time. I need to take all this out again.
Yeah.
And I need to cook again. And I got to the point where I was like, you know, maybe I didn't get to unload the dishwasher in the morning, so I was taking all the dishes from the day, filling up a sink with hot soapy water, putting them all in there to soak all day long, and like, it was like, it's just been like this endless, you know, work. It's 24/7, I think, and there's an imbalance of who's taking on the responsibilities in many homes, and moms are exhausted. This is exhausting.
Right.
Nobody can argue that this hasn't been exhausting, and then when you throw food into it, it's just another layer.
Right.
All these meals at home that you're not used to, you know.
And it feels like it shouldn't be exhausting because we're sitting around and our house is not going anywhere, but it's the mental and the emotional toll.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And my kids, you know, can we eat this tonight? Can we order? I'm like, whose bank account are you operating from? Because we're not. Also, I went to the grocery store, safely of course. I have plenty of food in the house. We're going to use it. We're not throwing food away at this point. I also like to show them from a little bit of a, you know, an inequities, like we are fortunate that we have food in the house.
Right.
We're going to use it. So.
Totally.
Yeah.
And well, that's another story. I mean, we could talk about this probably for hours, but those first few weeks when we were quarantining and we weren't going to the store and we were trying to order groceries and it was a 4 or 5 day wait to get them.
Yep.
And then the grocery store didn't have everything we wanted and they were making substitutions, and then you think you're getting what's on your list and you have a meal plan that you're going to make pasta tonight, but when you open the bag from the grocery store, it's some bizarro sauce and some different noodle that your family won't eat, and then you're like, okay,
yeah,
now what?
Now what? Right. And you and I would argue we're pretty good cooks. You know, we can make it work, but
some people have a harder time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been a long few months.
Yeah.
And as I keep thinking of the Wizard of Oz when Glinda comes and sings, you know, come out wherever you are, and the munchkins start slowly, you know, coming out. That's what I feel like we're doing right now. Like
that's
everyone's
really
kind of dipping their toe in the water a little bit, and you know, I'm very much practicing safe social distancing, but we've been outside hanging out.
We have been.
Yeah. And I think my kids are very much appreciating that because they're missing life, and your kids are missing life, and we are as well. But as the summer months are coming, I'm hoping that, you know, the cooking is never going to slow down, but I hope it changes a little bit, that I don't feel this pressure, and I'm teaching, so I'm stopping that for right now, and a little bit more time on my hands. But
yeah. And you're teaching summer school? No. Okay.
Hell no. Sorry, but no way.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think there's going to be, you know, there's so many unknowns about what school's going to be next year, so there's going to be quite a bit of work that's going to have to be done around that topic. So, you know, trying to figure out how you're teaching these classes online and keeping kids engaged, there's a challenge to it.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll see.
Yes, we will.
More
and my work is not slowing down for the summer. It never does. It's usually busier.
Right.
I don't know, nothing's typical right now, so I don't know what it's going to look like, but in the summer, when kids are off school and home from college, I have more patience.
Yeah, because they have time to be able to come in, or, well, to be able to see you, no matter how they're going to be able to do that this year. Yeah.
But, But that doesn't mean my family doesn't still expect me to, what's the word? Manage the meal
Yeah.
plan and the situation, the groceries, and
Right.
even though they're all off.
Right. Yeah, there's gonna have to be maybe a little tide shift over at your house a little bit, you know? Well, and I had to get on a meeting yesterday, I think it was right at noon, and I told the kids, this is an important meeting and you can't jump in. I can't tell you how many Zoom meetings my children have been on with whomever is on the
Right.
screen, but this one I said, you can't. And my 7-year-old said, well, I'll make lunch. And I was like, fine. Like, I just kind of threw my hands up in the air.
Yeah.
And I said, you have to clean up after yourselves. And they made lunch.
What did they make?
Peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Mhm.
And I can't even tell you how much they, can you please buy white bread? I'm like, I'm not buying
Oh
white
my
bread.
gosh, we've had that too.
Can we please buy white bread? No. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich, so on the whole grain bread. Cucumbers, cherries, because cherries were at the grocery store. I got to get those. A cheese stick for each of them.
Morgan did this?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Can she please come and feed Nate?
Maybe. We can just tell her what time.
And tell him he can't just eat tortillas and
Yeah.
cheese.
Yeah. Yogurt, granola, and honey. She made herself yogurt,
This
granola, and
sounds
honey.
like a big meal.
It was for the two of them. And they ate all of it and they cleaned it up. I was like, I walked out because I was totally expecting a disaster.
Yeah.
And for the yelling to start, there's been a lot of yelling. It was great. I was like, wonderful, thank you so much.
awesome.
And for that, you've earned dessert tonight.
That's
So,
awesome.
there you go.
Your comment on the white bread, that's another thing, like, I've been doing like all this anti-inflammatory diet, avoiding processed foods
Yeah.
over the past year, and as time has gone on, it's shelter in place between lack of availability of ingredients for stuff I want to make and just being stuck at home, and all I look forward to is what am I eating for dinner tonight. I've just really fallen, and I've fallen so badly that one week I couldn't get whole wheat bread, and so I bought honey wheat, which isn't whole wheat. In case you don't know that, it's not whole wheat. And my kids were like, you bought white bread. And
They thought they got you.
they
thought
thought
they
they
broke
got
you.
me. But it was a slippery slope. Once I did that, I was like, well, they're okay, so I bought it again. But the second time there were other options, but I felt so happy that I had made them happy
Yeah.
and things were bad.
Yeah.
And there's that dynamic too with food right now. Like, I feel bad, I'm scared and uncertain of the future,
Right.
and that white bread made my kids really happy,
I know.
as did the 4 pints of Oberweis ice cream that I bought one night, and so then they ate all that, so then I bought them more of that. It's
Right.
a really slippery slope in terms of staying healthy, and we eat healthy anyway, but
Right.
it's like the seeping in of the junk.
We had a similar Lucky Charms incident.
Did you?
I bought a box of Lucky Charms for St. Patrick's Day.
Uh-huh.
And at first I was doing sugar cereal on the weekend only.
Mm.
That quickly stopped. But then I realized I was coming into the kitchen to find that they hadn't eaten actually any of the cereal. They just picked out and ate all the marshmallows. And I was
Brilliant.
like, and once again, it was like, I'll buy it again, maybe. And they were like, no, we promise we'll eat all the
Right.
cereal. We won't. And they did it again. I was like, we're done.
Yeah.
And if I don't have it in the house, then there's not that temptation.
Absolutely.
But I was like, you can't just eat marshmallows
Well, they
for
can, and
breakfast.
they did.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were in heaven. But I was like, no, this isn't how we eat. And I get that this is a slippery slope. And
It
we've
is.
been doing quite a bit of baking in the house.
Right.
And, maybe we save that for our next episode. But, you get down that rabbit hole and all of a sudden there's like treats and all this stuff. Because you're like, well, we're home.
Right.
We'll spread it out. And then you don't. And it's gone quickly.
And it's sitting there.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we're having a freshly baked dessert probably at least twice a week.
Well, that's because your daughter is enjoying that immensely.
She is.
Right.
And again, I want her to have something to do
Yeah.
when she's bored.
Right.
It
Can I
makes
make
her
a
happy.
cake? Yes, you can.
And then I don't really want to eat it.
So a
But
piece
if-
winds up on my front porch, which I appreciate.
And if I don't eat it, she's devastated, so I really have to.
Yeah, absolutely. I get it.
Anyway, so we're kind of at the end of the time for this first episode, but I
Yeah.
wanted to share with our listeners in terms of formatting. I know in the past we've had like topics, and we've covered a lot of really good topics, and we can always cover those again, but I thought moving forward, just to keep things very flexible, I thought that for this series, and we'll see how it goes, we can always readjust, that we would talk about what's going on in the world in terms of how that's affecting nutrition families. We can watch, there's so much stuff I'm getting in my inbox.
Yeah.
News studies. Let's just talk about what we want to talk about, what's hot. Things I thought we could even, sometimes I can share a patient's situation from the week, which I have to do anonymously, but
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good conversation to have, and then I think it gives some people
interesting.
They're seeing that maybe in their home, and they're like,
Exactly.
oh, maybe I do need to have my kid assessed or something like that. And yeah, we can, you can always go back where you find your podcast to listen to any of our previous episodes if you're looking for a topic. But Betsy thought that might be a good idea and floated that idea out to me, and I think it's good because it becomes a little bit more conversational, and then we certainly love having guests on, but then that
we
includes,
still can.
yeah, absolutely,
but
it's another perspective, but we don't have to.
We don't have to, and we're not tied to a topic. It gives us the option to be flexible and adaptable, which is part of the current culture right now.
Patience, flexibility, and grace have been the three words that I am trying to live by right now. I don't always have that. Like I said, I yell a lot, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's all right. All right, well, Jen, again, so fun, so glad you're back.
Oh, I'm excited to be back. Thank you.
I had a great recording with you today. I'm so excited to release this.
Me too.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please rate us and share it with your friends. Remember, you can find our episodes wherever you get your podcast downloads, Spotify, iTunes, etc. We are now also podcasting and putting it up on YouTube.
Great.
Reaching a new audience that way.
Oh, exciting.
So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. And also, if you are not doing that, please follow us on all the Feed to Succeed social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and your new website will be
Mid-July.
Up in mid-July.
It's coming so soon.
Awesome.
Yes.
So excited.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.